When your grandchild leaves after a visit, when the car pulls out of the driveway and the house goes quiet again, do you ever stand there and wonder, did I do enough? Did any of it matter? Was that time something they'll carry? Most grandparents ask themselves this, and most of them are working from the wrong assumption about what the answer looks like. Because here is what the research on childhood memory actually tells us. The things that build permanent memories in children, the things that get encoded into who they become, are not the expensive trips or the big surprises. They are not the gifts or the elaborate plans. They are 5 specific things, simple things, things you may already be doing without knowing it. Today, we're going to go through all 5, and for each one, we're going to look at exactly what is happening in your grandchild's brain when you do them, because the science here is specific, and it changes how you understand what you're building every single visit. Before we get to the list, there is one thing you need to understand about how childhood memory works, because most people get this wrong, and it changes everything. Most people assume that memories form when something big happens, something exciting or unusual. A trip somewhere spectacular, a birthday party, a surprise that takes their breath away. And those things can create memories, yes. But here is what developmental psychologists have actually found. Dr. Robin Fivish at Emory University has spent decades studying how children build autobiographical memory, the kind of memory that becomes part of their story, part of who they are. And what her research shows is this: children do not form lasting memories from isolated big moments as reliably as they do from repeated, emotionally safe interactions. In plain terms, it is not the once-a-year spectacular. It is the every time I visit ordinary. When a child experiences something with a safe, familiar person, and then experiences it again and again, their brain does not just remember the event. It builds what researchers call a blueprint, a felt sense of that person, a record that says, this is what it feels like to be with her. This is what safe feels like. This is who I am when I am here. That blueprint does not fade, and you are building it every single visit, whether you know it or not. This is the most important thing to hold on to as we go through the 5 things. None of them require planning. None of them require money. All of them are already available to you. The question is simply whether you are doing them with intention. 1. Let them feel it and say it out loud. When your grandchild walks through your door, something happens in the first few seconds of that moment that is far more significant than it appears. Attachment research, the decades of work that began with psychologist John Bowlby and has continued in laboratories around the world, tells us that children are constantly scanning the faces of the people they trust most. They are asking, without words, am I welcome here? Does this person want me here? Is this safe? They get the answer not from what you say, but from what your face does. When your face lights up, when your body communicates, without a single word, I have been waiting for you. Their nervous system receives that information as a felt truth, not as a thought, as something that lives in the body, as a memory that does not require language to be stored. Bowlby called this the secure base. A person who, just by being present and welcoming, tells a child's nervous system, you are safe here, you can relax, you can be fully yourself. You are that secure base. And it starts at the front door. But there is a second part to this, and it belongs here, because it works on the same principle. The words you say to your grandchild, not just I love you as they leave, but the specific, honest things you say about who they are, carry an extraordinary weight that most grandparents underestimate. Developmental psychologists describe the years between roughly 3 and 10 as a critical window for building a child's internal sense of self. During this window, The voice of a trusted adult, especially one with whom a child has a deep bond, lands differently than it does anywhere else. It goes in not as information, but as identity. When Mary Jo Bell, a writer who has spent years studying the grandparent connection, told the story of her grandmother, who looked at her quiet, gentle brother and said simply, "Brian, you are a peacemaker," that brother spent the rest of his life living toward that description. Not because he was told what to do, because someone he loved and trusted saw something in him and named it out loud. Your grandchild will not always remember the exact words you said, but they will carry the feeling those words left for the rest of their lives. So, let your face tell them they are the most important thing that has walked through your door. And then, at some point during the visit, say something true and specific. Not a generic compliment, something you actually see. "I notice how patient you are. You have a way of making everyone around you feel included. The time I spend with you is my favorite time." Say it out loud, because children do not always carry away what we intend. They carry away what we actually say. 2. Let them lead. This one is harder than it sounds, because the instinct is always to have something prepared, a plan, an activity you think they will love. And sometimes that is wonderful, but some of the most powerful memory-making moments happen when you put down the plan and say, "What do you want to do?" And then actually do it with your full attention. Even if it is showing you a video game you have never heard of. Even if it means sitting on the grass, doing nothing in particular for 20 minutes. Even if it means watching them explain something you do not fully understand, and asking questions as if their answer is the most interesting thing you have heard all week. What your grandchild is doing in those moments is not wasting your time. They are testing something. They are checking whether you are genuinely interested in them, not in performing grandparent activities with them, but in them, their actual mind, their actual world, their actual enthusiasms, however strange or unfamiliar those enthusiasms might be. Developmental psychologists call this child-led play, and the research on it is consistent. When children feel their play partner is truly following their lead, not redirecting, not correcting, not improving, something happens neurologically that is different from directed play. Their stress response quiets, their sense of agency increases, and their memory encoding of the interaction deepens. In plain terms, they remember being with someone who thought what they loved was worth following. There is also something else happening here that matters enormously for the relationship between grandparents and their adult children. When you ask your grandchild what they want to do, and then you do it, you are telling their parents something too. You are showing them that when their child is with you, their child's experience is the center, not your agenda, not your preferences, their child. That is one of the most powerful things you can communicate to a parent. And the grandparents who understand this, who ask before they plan, who listen before they lead, tend to have not only closer relationships with their grandchildren, but more trusted relationships with the parents, who are ultimately the gatekeepers of how much time you get. 3. Touch them. Not forced hugs, not mandatory kisses before they leave. Not the kind of physical affection that is performed for the benefit of the adults watching. Just simple, natural, unhurried physical connection. A hand on the back, stroking their hair while they sit next to you, holding their hand while you walk somewhere without any particular destination in mind, letting them lean against you without pulling away to do something else. The science here is specific, and it is remarkable. Research published on what is called affective touch, gentle, caring physical contact, shows that this kind of touch triggers the release of oxytocin in both the child and the caregiver. Oxytocin is the neurochemical most associated with bonding, with safety, and with the encoding of positive social memory. In plain terms, when you hold them close and stay there, something happens in both of your brains that says this moment matters. File this. Keep this. A study from the Feldman Lab, which has done some of the most detailed research on touch and brain development, found that children who experience high levels of affectionate physical contact show greater connectivity in the brain regions associated with social and emotional development. Your touch is not a small thing. It is literally shaping the architecture of how they experience being loved. And here is something worth sitting with. Grandparents are often uniquely positioned to offer this kind of unhurried physical presence in a way that parents, managing schedules, managing behavior, managing the thousand logistics of a child's day, sometimes cannot. You are not in a hurry. You do not have somewhere else to be. When you hold their hand, you are just holding their hand. That is rarer than it sounds, and children remember it. 4. Tell them stories. Not just any stories. Stories about their family. Stories about when their parents were young. Stories about you, what you were like at their age, what you were afraid of, what made you laugh, the time you made a mistake that still makes you shake your head. This is one of the most scientifically powerful things you can do for a child's sense of self. Dr. Robin Fivish's research at Emory University and decades of follow-up studies since have found something extraordinary. Children who hear family stories regularly develop what researchers call a stronger autobiographical self. They have a more coherent sense of where they come from, a more stable sense of who they are, and when they face difficult things, hard days, moments of self-doubt, they recover faster. Researchers call this the intergenerational narrative. And they have found that it works best when the stories include not just the victories, but the struggles. Not just the moments when things went right, but the moments when they went wrong and the family found a way through. Children who know that their grandparents faced hard things and survived them carry something into difficulty that other children do not. The felt knowledge that struggle is survivable, that it has been survived before by people they are made of. The stories do not have to be important. They do not have to be dramatic. Your grandchild wants to know, what were you like when you were my age? What was Dad like as a little boy? What was it like where you grew up? Did you ever get in trouble? What made you laugh? Every story you tell them is a thread in something they are weaving, something called a family narrative. And developmental psychology is very clear. Children who have a rich family narrative, who know the stories of the people who came before them, show measurably better emotional resilience throughout their lives. You are not just telling stories. You are giving them something to stand on. One more thing about this. When you tell your grandchild a story from your own life that includes something true and hard, a failure, a fear, a moment when you did not know what to do, you are doing something that no one else in their life can quite do the same way. You are showing them that the people they come from are real, that being imperfect and still going forward is part of the inheritance they are receiving. That kind of honesty, coming from a grandparent, lands with a particular weight. It says, life is complicated, and you are made of people who know how to carry that. 5. Create a world they can smell, feel, and return to. Final one might be the most underestimated item on the entire list. Here is something the research on memory tells us that most people find surprising. When adults are asked to describe their earliest and most vivid memories of their grandparents, they almost never begin with an event. They begin with a sensation, the smell of something baking, the particular feel of a certain chair, the sound of a voice in the next room, the quality of light in a specific kitchen at a specific time of day. Sensory memories are formed in childhood and stored in the amygdala, and they are extraordinarily durable in the brain. far more durable than the memory of what happened. The smell of your kitchen, the feel of your couch, the particular way your house sounds in the morning. These things become what researchers call comfort anchors, sensory cues that your grandchild will return to in their mind for the rest of their lives, often without knowing why, often in moments when they need to feel safe. You cannot manufacture this, but you can protect it. You protect it by having things that are consistent. The same smell in the kitchen, because you make the same things. The same blanket on the same chair. The same walk you take together that goes the same direction. And this is where ritual becomes so important. Memory research tells us that the brain forms especially durable memories around predictable, emotionally warm patterns. When a child knows that something will happen every time they visit, and it does, their brain does not just remember the experience. It creates what researchers call a schema, a deep template of that feeling, a mental and emotional blueprint that says, this is what it is like here. This is what being at her house means. That blueprint is what your grandchildren will carry into adulthood. It is what they will feel when they smell something that reminds them of your kitchen. It is what will surface unexpectedly when they are grown and having a hard day, and something pulls them back to a feeling of being completely safe. The ritual does not need to be elaborate. We always check on the garden together first. We always play one game of cards before anything else. We always make hot chocolate the same way and drink it on the porch. Whatever it is, the content matters less than the repetition, because repetition is how you make yourself permanent in them. There is something worth saying here about the promises we make and do not keep. Children do not distinguish between a firm promise and an enthusiastic comment. When you say, "We will go to the zoo next visit," they take that as settled. When you say, "I will be at your soccer game," they will look for you on the sidelines. And when those things do not happen, not because you are a bad grandparent, but because life is complicated, what they feel is not just disappointment. It is a small confusion about whether you are someone they can count on. The fix is simple. Be careful with the future tense. Say the first "would love to do that with you someday," instead of "we will do that next time." And when you do break a promise, because sometimes you will, go back to that child directly and say, "I know I said I would be there, and I wasn't. Can we figure out how I can make it up to you?" That conversation builds trust. Silence after a broken promise chips away at, "Let's bring all of this together." Your grandchild is building a memory of you right now, not a record of events, not a list of gifts or places or things you did, a felt sense of who you are, a blueprint that will live in them long after the specific memories have faded. And what that blueprint is made of, the research tells us clearly, is 5 things. The way your face changes when they walk in the door. The words you say that are specific and true and stay. The moments when you followed them into their world instead of pulling them into yours. The unhurried physical presence that told their nervous system, "Here, you are safe." The stories that gave them something to stand on, not just the victories, but the real ones, the complicated ones, the ones that show them where they come from, and the ordinary sensory world of being with you. The smell, the feel, the small repeated rituals that told their brain this place means something. None of this is complicated. None of it requires money. None of it requires a plan. It requires presence, attention, the willingness to be genuinely there, not just physically, but actually there for the hours you have. Here is something that is worth sitting with before you go. The version of your grandchild who still wants to show you everything, every drawing, every discovery, every random thought, will not be this version forever. The one who runs to the door when you pull up. The one who asks you to stay just a little longer. That is not a warning. It is just true. And the beautiful thing is that everything on this list, Every single thing the science points to is already available to you. Every ordinary Tuesday is a chance to be unforgettable. You do not have to be a perfect grandparent. You just have to be present, honest, and willing to follow them somewhere they want to go. The rest builds itself. Before you go, one question. When you think about your own grandparents, or the person in your childhood who played that role, what do you actually remember? Not what you remember happening, what you remember feeling. Leave it in the comments, because I think when grandparents in this community hear each other's answers to that question, something shifts. You start to understand that what you are building right now, in the ordinary hours of an ordinary visit, is exactly that, someone's answer, 20 or 30 years from now, to the question of what they remember. This has been Family Bonds After 60. Take care of yourself. And remember, the most important legacy you will ever leave is not what you give them. It is how they feel when they are with you.